How would you like to play with RC cars all day and get paid for it? I'm Matt Higgins, I'm into RC, and this is how to get a job in the RC industry. Now, the reality is that job where you get paid to play with RC cars all day really doesn't exist. But there are a ton of jobs in the RC industry, and they're attainable. These are my tips for getting a job in a hobby that you probably love, but don't know how to get started. The first thing to realize is that jobs in mainstream companies exist in the RC industry in the bigger companies. So we're talking about HR, accounting, and jobs like that, warehousing. All those jobs that exist in other industries also exist in bigger companies in RC. But you probably want a job that's directly involved with the RC vehicles. These types of jobs include marketing, product development, team management, engineering, testing, the media, and also newer forms of media such as affiliate marketers or influencers. These are all jobs that are in the RC industry that specifically work with the RC cars hands-on. So how do you get in? Well, a little history. Back in the day, the number one way was racing. In the 90s and the early 2000s, when racing was still the biggest part of the hobby, probably the number one way people were going from hobby to professional was through racing. Now, that's not really the case anymore. Now, a lot of people who are middle management or higher, really involved in the industry, they have roots in racing, and that's how they got noticed and how they met people. But today, that's definitely not the case. I don't know that many people, or any really, that are transitioning from racing into full-time employment in an RC company, other than a very few number of people who are strictly paid professional racers. But that's, again, a very small amount of people. It's probably just as hard and likely to become a full-time professional RC racer as it is to make to the MLB or NBA. It's just not for everyone. That's not to say it's as hard as being a professional athlete. It's just that the opportunities are so few and far in between. So if back in the day, one of the number one ways to get into the industry was through racing, probably the number two, and probably more people overall, was through hobby stores. Now, this is still very much true. A lot of people I work with day to day talk about their days back at the hobby store. It is a great way to get experience and learn about the industry. So if you're young and you're in high school or college and you need a job anyways, and if you're thinking about winding up in the RC industry, look into working at a hobby store. And if you're already established in a career and you'd love to segue into RC someday, work in a hobby store on the weekends. It's a great way to build up your network, and we'll talk more about networking later, but it's also the best way to learn about the industry outside of just being an enthusiast. So working at a hobby store is pretty obvious advice, but what you want to do is make the most of it. If at all possible, work with the owner of the hobby store to allow you to interact with the distributors, with the manufacturers. Try to increase your network, meet as many people as possible, learn as much as you can about the industry, meet as many people as you can. If he goes to trade shows, see if you could find a way where you could go as well. Another great way to get involved in the RC industry or get started is to hire yourself. What I mean by that is do freelance. You could freelance write for a magazine or a website. Don't look to make a fortune off this. The easiest way to do this is offer your services, because they need people doing quality reviews, in exchange for the product. Don't look for a fee on top of that. You could also start your own YouTube channel. This is a great way to build your own brand. And if you have the skills and the means, look into 3D printing. Again, build your own brand here, and it'll give you a reason to interact with some manufacturers. Believe me, we notice the better 3D printers out there, the innovative stuff they're creating, and what they bring to the aftermarket realm. My overall biggest tip is networking. Now, back in the day, this was done at the racetrack. Nowadays, in the digital world, it's a lot different. You could do this on social media, and that's the easiest way to do this, but there are pros and cons to this. The pros is you could build up a huge network on social media. The con is it's often very superficial. You really don't get to know that many people because we're all interacting with so many people online. Now, you also do have to be careful. because while most people can make a good impression and go unnoticed, if you make a bad impression, it's usually very noticeable and people are unlikely to forget. And that brings me to my next point on networking. As big as the RC industry seems at times, it is in reality very small. Don't take this for granted. Make sure all your interactions are positive. Make sure you're always a good ambassador for the hobby and you represent yourself, your brand, as well as you possibly can. Be a professional. When you're online, help as many people as you can, be an ambassador, and basically make a good impression. If you make a bad impression, it can haunt you. Always avoid the drama and just remember to be careful on social media. So how do you find that job in the RC industry? Well, you have to look. Go to the major manufacturers' sites, look at the bottom of their web pages. Usually you'll either see a link right to careers or you'll see a link to About Us, which may lead to careers. Most of the bigger companies list their job opportunities. Check often. That's the tip. Go to these big companies, check often. Now, the second part of this is be willing to get your foot in the door. You don't always have to apply for your dream job. Apply for a job that makes sense and use it as an opportunity to get in, prove yourself, and find more opportunities. There are people in the RC industry who went in a certain track in engineering, for example, and have always stayed in that, either in product development or engineering and that side of it. And then there's people who've worked in IT, graphic design, marketing, product development. They'll work in all aspects as they just keep finding new opportunities and keep developing their talents. So the tip is be open-minded and be willing to take a job that gets you in the door. Another thing to keep in mind is the company you get your foot in the door with and start your career in RC may or may not be the company you always stay with. Again, remember it's a small industry. As you work for one company and build up your reputation, build up your skills, you could stay there or move on to another company. Never get caught up in the drama. Don't badmouth other companies, especially don't do it on social media, and realize you never know where the next opportunity might arise. So to recap, the best place to start is focusing on networking. Meet as many people as you can and focus on making valuable, positive connections. Go to as many events as you can, races, rock crawling events, whatever it is. Get out there and meet people face to face, not just on social media. But when you are on social media, be a good ambassador. Be mindful that you're building your own brand. Be careful of what you do on social media. Check the websites often. Be willing to take a job that gets your foot in the door. And when you do apply, reach out to those connections that you've made. A hobby store is still a great place to start in the industry, but you can also, as I say, hire yourself. Get started on a platform like YouTube or Instagram, build your brand, and make connections. People love hiring and working with people they know. So that's how you get a job in the RC industry. Please comment below. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And let me know what your dream job in RC would be.